To learn about yourself and the patterns that you carry that shaped you to who you are today can be so deeply understood and explored when you do ancestral magic. And ancestral magic are rituals and explorations and research that helps you take this connection that you have to your bloodline and bring it into your human realm, where you can understand more about yourself and carry their wisdom forward. And I promise you, your ancestors have a lot to say. They are so powerful. Even if you don't know them or haven't known them, or even if you do and didn't like them, when they're no longer human, their spirit, their orb of light can come in and support you in ways that you can't even imagine. So let's talk today about how to connect with your ancestors and rituals you can do to support this connection. Let's go. Being alive today means you have access to infinite wisdom through your ancestors. We all have them because we've been born of humans. Our blood comes from other humans that have passed their bloodline to us. And learning how to connect to the wisdom of your ancestors is powerful, powerful work. In fact, there's not a lot of work out there that can replicate how powerful it is to learn about yourself by connecting to your ancestors. Because I promise you, a lot of your patterning, your beliefs, your mannerisms, the way that you have achieved success or not achieved success in your life can be taken back steps to find out why. And once you have this knowledge on how and why you became who you became, then you learn how to change it. And the true definition of magic is understanding that you are in control, and learning how to master changing yourself is what changes your environment. Your circumstances, they change when you change. And learning about yourself through your ancestors is like hands down some of the most powerful work you can do. Now, I couldn't possibly cover all of it in this video, but I'm going to give you a starting place. I'm going to give you the steps to do to learn and prepare on how to work with your ancestors, and then rituals that you can do to actually connect to your ancestors. I'll focus on that here. If you want to do deeper work with your ancestors and your bloodline to clear patterns, to embrace their wisdom and carry forward only the parts that you want carrying forward in future generations and in yourself, join me in Extraordinary, because that's where I do it. So let me answer a couple of questions right up front. And for those of you that don't know me, hello, my name is Tahverlee. I'm a high priestess, a practicing witch, and the founder of the Moon Temple Mystery School. And this is my work. This is my passion. This is the way that I'm here to serve in the world, which is to help you regain, understand, and harness as much power as possible and learn the tools of real magic. And part of that is understanding yourself. Because for us to really be able to work with elements, to work with tools, to work with energy, we have to know ourselves at all times. And this is a powerful way to do it. So hello, make sure you subscribe and comment, because I love to receive your feedback. So one of the most commonly asked questions when it comes to ancestral work is, what if I don't know them? Or what if they were absent in my life? Or what if I didn't like them? Like, what if they were kind of shitty humans? And the answer is, I understand, I hear you, and a lot of us feel this way. Because it's not just our parents, whether they're living or not, or our grandparents, who may or may not be living, or our great-grandparents, or if you're my age, your great-grandparents very likely are not living. There's a multi-people and multi-levels of generations, and it's very likely that somewhere along the lines, one of them was not a necessarily human that you want to know when they were human. But I promise you that when they're not of the flesh and blood anymore of a body, and they've returned back to an orb of light, their energy has transmuted that. So even if you don't know them, their energy still exists, because you carry their energy in your blood, in your genetics, and you can access it through the spiritual realm. And if there are people that you don't necessarily want to interact with for whatever reason, you don't feel like they're an energy you want in your life, that's fine. You can skip that part of it. But I invite you to consider why. Is it possible that Whatever trauma came from that human and carried down might be significant enough to make you feel uncomfortable, or maybe it makes your mother uncomfortable to explore her mother as an example. It's okay. You can choose. Take it slow. So let's start with how to get to know your ancestors. Well, number one, you should do as much research as you can if you have any living relatives who can tell you information, and start writing it down. I recommend you create some sort of chart. There's 1,000 ways to do it. You can look it up. Your mother's lineage and down, your father's lineage and down, and create little bubbles, like little bubbles in your notebook or however you're charting it, and note down as much as you can where they were born, when they died, anything you know about that time. If they lived in, let's say, 1910, for example, and you knew that they lived in the southwestern part of the United States, what was it like then? Google is a beautiful thing. It will tell you a lot. So research as much as you can and track it. And once you know that, and if you don't know any of that, by the way, I'll give you a ritual at the end to let you connect to the spirits of your kin that you may not know. That's fine. And it happens because if you have an absent parent or if you've been adopted, you may not know even names. So if you don't know names, how do you even start the research? I'll tell you that at the very end. This is going under the assumption that you have at least names or knowledge to start somewhere. And then as you continue to go through this, you're going to start to discover things that are important. So I suggest the deeper you go, you chart it separately. So make one main chart of who you can find out about, knowledge on another page. And then I want you to go into deep levels of research. And this is not genealogy. Let me be clear. Genealogy is a different way of studying it. We're only going into as much as we need to know in order to connect to them, to connect to the spirit of the bloodline of your mother and your father. And that spirit of the bloodline is easier to tap into. Like the rituals to connect are easier if you know a little bit. That's why we're doing it. Now, listen, a lot of people end up falling in love with genealogy and research. And if that's you, then do it. Keep going down those rabbit holes. But some ways you can look into more information if you have a name or any type of information is marriage records, house ownership, death certificates, my great-grandmother on my father's side, so my father's mother's mother, she arrived in the United States on the Lusitania ship in 1911. So we were able to find a passenger manifesto of her arrival. Beautiful, amazing. We printed it. I mean, our whole family has it. It's quite incredible. And we were able to, with our relatives in Scotland and Ireland and Wales, specifically in Wales, determine what she was doing before she got on that ship, where she was nannying, where she came from. So we were able to, in one part of that family, go back, and it was quite amazing. So research as much as you can. Talk to people. Make some phone calls. Send emails. And all you have to do is say, I'm interested in learning more about where I come from and who they are and who they were. And document, document, document. And if you start to feel this, maybe I'm feeling that some people, and I've experienced that some people get stuck and can't get any more information and they can't research anymore. It's okay. Just get what you can and then take a breath and move on to the ritual. All right. So to do a ritual to connect to your ancestors, it's easiest for you to decide, are you going to connect to one specific one or a bloodline? Or do you have a specific question? So this is quite interesting and fascinating, but on my mom's side of the family, none of the women, including myself, have our gallbladders. We've all had issues with our gallbladders. Like, wild, right? I didn't even know this when I was growing up. It wasn't until I became an adult and someone said to me, sounds like what your pain is in your belly is a gallbladder issue. Do you know that nobody in your mom's side of the family has their gallbladders? And I'm like, what? I had no idea. So maybe there's a health issue that you want to kind of trace back, or maybe there's a family patterning of how you define success, where someone in your family has taught you that you have to work hard to do the thing, or hard work means, or that nobody in your family's ever been successful, or nobody in your family's ever been a millionaire, or everybody in your family's poor, or all these beliefs and ideas. I mean, you can go into one at a time. So first step before you go into the ritual is determine who and why. If you don't know any of those reasons and it just interests you, your why can be to connect with my bloodline, to understand where I come from. That's enough. But you might have more details. Separate pieces of paper, write that down. Now, this part of the video, you're going to want a pen and paper to note down the steps. Number 1, I want you to clear a space in your home, in your apartment, in your vehicle, in a shoebox. Clear a space where you're going to create an ancestral altar. And I want you to clear it with cleanliness, with smoke cleansing, with loud song, with your voice, whatever it is, to remove any stagnant energy, to make space for new energy. Almost as if you were inviting your great-great-grandparent to come and sit down and have tea with you. How clean would you make that space? If you knew that an old relative was literally coming into your home to see you for the first time, how would you clean the space? Most of us would clean it a lot. So physically clean, energetically clear. And then number 2, find a space that you can create an altar. Because altars are a powerful way for you to put items that represent your ancestors. If you have anything from your ancestors, put it on there. If you don't have anything from your ancestors, but you knew they were born in a time where a particular beverage or food was common, then print pictures or write pictures or display even just yourself, because you are the result of your ancestors. And so in this altar, I want you to think of the far part away from you, whatever space you decide, shoebox, shelf, table, whole room. I want you to face that space, and the far place from that space is the north. Put something related to earth or to the body and blood connection to your relatives. If you have a photo, if you have a watch, put it to the north. To the east, represent air. And how does air work within your ancestors? You might find that, your grandmother liked a particular type of perfume, or maybe your parents are living and your mother liked the smell of, baking pumpkin bread because her mother made pumpkin bread. You put a little pumpkin to represent that, like anything related to smell, air, or wind. And if you don't know, use the traditional air element. To the south, representing passion and physical bloodline. If you're not sure what that is, think of things related to fire. What riled your ancestors up? What might they have lived with? What might they have been passionate about? Maybe you have an ancestor that was in the medical field or was an artist, or in my family, I have ancestors that were shoe repairmen. And so maybe something related to passion can go to the south, which is the bottom part of your altar. And to the left of your altar, when you're facing it, is the west, and that's water. And I highly recommend you put a chalice of water there, and you can infuse it with anything that coincides with your ancestors, such as maybe you have an ancestor that liked to smoke tobacco. That could go to the south. Or you could put it around the chalice of water. Anything that correlates, the north being earth, to the right side, to the east being air, to the south being fire, and to the west being water. Anything that you can correlate to what you research, to what you find out, to what you know about even your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. Whatever you're focusing on with your ancestors, build an altar. You go in the center. It can be a picture of yourself, something you love about yourself, and it can be a candle. Because we're creating a web of connection through all this area of your altar in order to connect to your ancestors. And then around you, so if I'm looking at, say, a 2x2, 2 feet by 2 feet space, you have these items in the outer quadrant and yourself in the middle. Between the outer quadrant and yourself in the middle, I recommend that you put a whole circle of something like tea lights, representing all of the contributors to your bloodline now, to your kin, known or unknown. Now, here's the point where if you don't know anything about any of your bloodline, You represent yourself in each of those directions with the elements and put a circle of candle. And every candle that you set down on your altar, as you set it and light it, say, I call forth the unknown kin of my kin. I call forth my bloodline. I call forth my mother's lineage that I may not know. I call forth my mother's mother's mother. I call forth my mother's father's mother, and go forth and continue to call them in one by one. If you need a recommended amount of candles, go for 13. Call them in, all the lineages. So now you've made this space. What do you do? First, you set time aside to determine how long are you leaving this altar up. Is it temporary, or are you going to continue to work with it for, say, 2025? Decide a timeline. And then decide, how often are you going to sit near or by your altar and commune with your ancestors? How long? Are you going to do it for a month? Are you going to do it for a year? Are you going to show up every Sunday at 7 a.m. with coffee? Are you going to sit at your altar and pray twice a week? So set a time period on how long you're going to work with your ancestors, and when are you going to come? And then start doing it. So I recommend that altar becomes step 1. That might take some time. Step 2, really determine how and what you're committing to with your ancestors. And then step 3 is why. Are you asking them for knowledge, for wisdom, for blessings, for pattern clearing, for boons, for more information? Are you asking them to tell you what you need to know to be the best version of yourself? So number 3, determine why. And then the time that you've agreed to sit at your altar, go there for that time and do some type of handcrafting. If you sew, sew. If you draw, draw. If you like to journal, this is a time to journal. If you like to paint, paint. If you don't like to do anything that's like handcrafting, then just write. Ask a question and write. So let's walk through this. I'm going to give you a specific example. So you've set up an altar space that you can sit near, doesn't have to be in front of, but near or by. You have decided that you're going to come 3 times a week in the evenings at 7 p.m. and you're going to sit near your altar. So at 7 p.m. you go near your altar. Maybe you're burning a smoke blend of dragon's blood, patchouli, mugwort, or rosemary. Maybe you make tea and you share a cup of tea with your altar. You maybe put it near the chalice and you're going to sit. And so there's 3 times a week you're going to sit at 7 p.m. and maybe you're just journaling and maybe you have a question. Hello, ancestors. I didn't get to know you before you were gone. I haven't known you. How can I connect with you? What do you want me to know? How do you want to carry your bloodline forward? And then free write. See what comes. If journaling doesn't feel good, maybe just sit quiet and sip tea. I invite you to not let that time be space where you're doing something with a productive output. So you're not reading a book, you're not producing a piece of art that's going to be sold, you're not, stitching something that's for a project. You might be stitching something, but without an outcome. Just letting your hands and movement just be and commune with your ancestors. Ask questions, free write. Now, this is not right. This is not hard. It just takes a commitment. If you truly want to connect with your ancestors, they will come. They will come. Sometimes one at a time if you're not intentional about who. Sometimes as a group energy. And here's the thing. They won't always come during that period of time that you're communing. That communion is calibration. It's opening the connection between you and your bloodline. Most likely, they are going to appear outside of that time. They're going to come when you're doing other things, or they're going to appear when you're dreaming, or maybe you're doing a meditation later in the day and you see a figure and you're like, oh my goodness, that kind of like looks like me. It looks familiar. They'll come at different times. Maybe when you're going for a walk or playing with your puppy or playing, if your family is playing a game of, some type of card game one night and it feels like there's a presence sitting there. The communing part is to calibrate. And all of this is pretty much just step 1. You can do this as many times as you want or for as long as you want. But my invitation is, don't let your altar get stale. Don't start and stop. Either start and say, okay, I'm done for now, and take it down. You can speak. You can be with it as long as you want, and you're in control, so you can change your mind if you desire. Now, I'm going to give you a really beautiful protection mantra that you can use with your ancestors, and it's powerful no matter what. And I did share this on social media, so I'm sharing it here kind of in a different way, but this is something that all of us should do. This is a baseline. Ancestors aren't just about protection. They're about seeing their bloodline carry forward to the highest potential. That might just be the question you ask is, show me how to be the best version of myself since I carry your blood in my blood. What do I need to know? That's a baseline. Here's a way to call them in for protection. Hail my bloodline. Hail my people. I call those that came before. Protect my home, my family, and my property. Ancestors, I welcome you. This is your home too. Please guard and protect me and those I love. Yeah, that's what I shared on social media. So the last little nugget I'm going to give you is, we traditionally do ancestral work this time of year because the veil between the spirit world and the human world is less. It's easier to pass between spiritual world and human world. So your ancestors can come in a little easier to you. You can reach out to them a little easier. That meeting in the middle, right? That liminal space that exists between the human plane and the spiritual plane, it's thinner. That veil is thin, which means it's more easily crossable. So now's a really perfect time for you to do that, up until end of February, really. This is a powerful time to do this work, and I really invite you to start. And remember, this is just the very beginning. There's so much more that you can do to go into specific lineage or specific patterning that might have to do with how you handle money, how your family handles abundance, how your family handles relationships. Like, these are real things in your life now that impact you, that very likely come from your ancestors or from your lineage. So you can go into those, and I will teach you that deeper in Extraordinary. So join me there. I'll put the link in the show notes. And in the meantime, enjoy the work with your ancestors.